Hello and welcome to Shaka Extra Time. I am Paul Ndiho, and joining us live on Facebook Live is Shaka Sal himself, aka the Kawale Kid. Hello, Shaka.
Hello, Paul.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much.
It's been quite a while. We had traveled to Africa for nearly a month. We had been gone for nearly a month, and we covered so much ground while there. We went to the DRC, Zambia, Tanzania, Zanzibar, and back to United States. Maybe let me start by getting your overall assessment of the entire trip.
I must say it was very, very interesting. It was an opportunity, of course, to be back on the mother continent and experience a lot of things, meet a lot of different people with different opinions. And I have to say, frankly, that I came back much, much richer, much informed, and much more ready to continue what some of my audience actually characterized me as an agent of social, economic justice for all of us.
What struck you the most of all the three countries that we went to? What stood out for you?
One thing that is very, very clear, I couldn't probably tell a difference, frankly, when we talk about democracy or democratic transitions in Africa. I could not tell a difference, frankly, between Kinshasa, Lusaka, Dar es Salaam, and Zanzibar. They seem to be pretty much on the same page, the difference, frankly, being by degrees.
Interesting. It's interesting that you say that. Let's start in Congo. We had a very, very good reception in Congo, except for the fact that the president snubbed us. He didn't give us an interview. But overall, we had a great experience in Congo. Your thoughts?
I don't know that the president snubbed us. I think he had his own reasons. But I think that I agree with you that we had a fairly good time, at least in terms of having an opportunity to go to different parts of the country and seeing some of the major development contributions, even though some of them, in fact, you can't believe it, they were actually done by a man that is regarded as, of course, a dictator who ruled his country for 32 years, Mobutu Sese Seko Wazabanga.
What are some of those things that you can maybe talk about?
I'm talking about Inga Dam, for example. To be very honest with you, I was remarkably touched that even though all you hear about the Democratic Republic of the Congo, you hear the good thing about music. Music which, of course, for the most part originates from Matonge, where you and I went, and we stood by the statue of Franco Rwamba Yamakiadi, and all those sorts of people. You also hear about war. You talk about the Eastern DRC, we didn't go there. We talk about Kasai, we didn't go there. But it seems, life seems to be normal in Kinshasa, the capital. And obviously, Inga has a great potential, something that very few people, frankly, know about. One of these days, if Africa is going to industrialize, which it must do, it will need, guess who? The Inga Dam. And the Inga Dam has the capacity, it has the potential to light the entire African continent and beyond. And what was very interesting for me, Paul, was that the guy is actually in charge of the dams at Inga, which are, by the way, if you are Ugandan, you cannot compare any of those dams with Owen Forest Dam in Jinja. These guys are Congolese, highly educated, very professional. I was remarkably impressed. And then, of course, we go to Matadi, the inland port. You talk about the bridge. This bridge that was built in, I guess it was 1983, it reminded me a bit of the Golden Gate Bridge of San Francisco. Not that it is that long, not that it actually even has a semblance of gold or whatever, but it reminded me a bit of that. It's not one of those things, frankly, that I expected to find on the ground in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So I think, you know, we had a good time. Obviously, very disappointed that we could not finally do an interesting interview with the head of state, President Joseph Kabila.
By the way, have we gotten any explanation as to why the president disappeared all of a sudden?
Well, it's not that he disappeared.
An apology
it's not that he disappeared, but I think that it's very clear that he was not particularly pleased by the remarks of Nick Haley, who happens to be U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, who came up with some statements suggesting that she did not have confidence in the ability of the government of Joseph Kabila, for example, to bring about justice for the 2 UN international investigators who lost their life in Kasai. So the president was very, very livid, and he said, you know, Shaka, yes, you may be my friend and you're my friend, but I don't see how I could possibly talk to the Voice of America, which you represent.
On that note, let's cross over to Zambia. You had a very, very interesting journey in Zambia. This was your first time there, but you're a household name. Literally from the airport to every single place we went, people wanted to take selfies with you. What did that make you feel?
Very, very humbling, to be honest with you, Paul. Right from the time that we landed at the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport in Lusaka, beginning with immigration officers, customs, and you name it, and taxi drivers, and eventually getting at checking in at the Radisson Blue Hotel, right from the sweeper through the custom service kind of manager or attendee to the manager, going to the restaurant, and almost everybody, you know, saying, wait a minute, don't go away, because we'll be right back with you. And others saying, can you believe that I am hugely terrific to meet a one, Shaka. I knew that Straight Talk Africa was a very popular program. I had been told, I had obviously accessed some emails, I had seen some social media comments and what have you, and I had experienced some kind of life experience. But to be honest with you, I had never experienced what I went through this time around. It reached a point where, to be honest with you, I wasn't in fact anymore enjoying it. I was sort of enduring it. I actually wished that I could run away.
Shaka, maybe share with us just briefly about your interactions in Zambia. We started off at ZNBC. You had a very great reception there. From there, we went did a town hall. We also met former founding president, Kenneth Kaunda, and met with the opposition leader, Hakainde Hichilema. Maybe bring us up to speed. What is it that you guys talked about in those interactions?
Very interesting, of course, when you go to ZNBC, which you call ZNBC. Obviously, if you are Zambian, you call it Z because you're talking about the British version of English. If you're American, you say ZNBC, Zambia National Broadcasting Corporation. A very, very good institution, by the way. That is true. Yeah. This was a gift or a present from the managing director, because he was actually humbled and honored to be in a position to receive me. And I told him that the feeling was mutual, because I had heard about him. I obviously appreciated the fact that they, being our partner affiliate station, they had actually gone out of their way to essentially become a real partner by providing us with this type of crew that we wanted, and going on the various shoots that you and those colleagues were conducting. I was humbled in the sense that almost everybody at ZNBC wanted to have a picture with Shaka, the kid from Kabale, wanted to have a selfie, wanted to have an autograph and all that kind of stuff. All of a sudden, Paul, I became what I would say a beneficiary of what I characterized as exaggerated attention. But probably because all that kind of attention really sort of humanized me. For once, I looked at myself and said, who is this type of guy? I mean, who is this guy? These guys are responding or reacting to. It didn't seem to be Shaka Sali or Ndugu Shaka, the kid from Kawale. It was very humbling.
How about your interaction with the former president and founding president of the Republic of Zambia?
Founding President Dr. Kenneth David Kaunda. Incredible. The man is 93 years young. You realize that at one time he actually tried to jog for us. Did you notice? And he obviously has a very sharp memory, because he recalled the kind of interactions that he and I had had over the years. I remember to the extent that he said, you know, he thanked me, of course, for what I am doing and for what I am doing for Africa and the audience and what have you, and he encouraged me to continue doing the same. And he even, remember, said, you even started dressing like me, because I happen to be in what I call a Jakaya Kikwete type of safari suit. His used to be called Kaunda suits. They only differ on the style of the collars. The Kaunda suit is rather flat, whereas the kind of suit I put on, the Jakaya Kikwete suit, the collar is pretty much a normal shirt collar. And we obviously talked about a lot of things, and you could see that he could remember some of his colleagues or peers, his generation. It was very interesting. And of course, when we went back the following day and did the interview, it was very interesting that he volunteered to play a piano for us, which he did. And we recorded it. And I'm sure that one of these days we'll share it with the audience.
Very briefly, talk about your interaction with the opposition leader who had just been released from jail.
Hakainde Hichilema. I have to say frankly that I respect him enormously, especially having listened and shared his experience, frankly, in the 4 months that he was a resident of the nation's maximum prison without any trial. A man who just happened to be on the same road when the presidential motorcade came up. You would have expected at worst perhaps to be charged with some kind of traffic offense. But my friend, he ended up being charged with, guess what? Treason. That
Which
he was
is not bailable.
Yeah, that he was in fact conspiring to overthrow the legal, the legitimate government of the Republic of Zambia, even though he says, yes, the government of Edgar Lungu may be legal, but in his view, it is illegitimate because, and he has a lot of, perhaps, in fact, I would say, a lot of evidence to boot that the president, Edgar Lungu, is a beneficiary of a stolen election. And that's why he says he's not going to recognize him. But it was very, very humbling, frankly, interacting with him, and the fact that this is an incredibly rich businessman, powerful politician, perhaps arguably, in fact, from what I saw, the most popular politician to date in the country, including the capital, Zambia, Lusaka. And yet he was very humble, down to earth. But what was also interesting is that he and his wife said they are some of the most ardent fans of Straight Talk Africa. And he said the security people who had been sent to him to his house, beautiful house, by the way. That guy doesn't need actually a state house, because that is even more than a state house,
Yeah,
I'm
we need
sure.
to get to the comments.
So he said they had actually been sent to kill him. I remember saying, so what is the evidence? He said, Shaka, I can tell you they had come to kill me. So I said, how come they did not kill you? He said, the person up there, meaning God.
Okay, can you talk briefly about the interaction, the town hall? You had a great town hall in Zambia, very briefly. And we go to Tanzania, then comments.
It was incredible. First of all, of course, beautiful campus, University of Zambia.
Organized by the one and only Shishua.
Shishua, a graduate, of course, of Oxford University. A guy who happens to be a prince from his community, the Rosie, one time great historical empire. And well attended. In fact, well attended is an understatement because it was full and there were a lot of people who were even standing, including outside. Obviously, it was interesting because even the presidential press secretary or spokesperson of the president himself, Amos Chanda, was there. I remember that almost all the criticism, in fact, was leveled against the government that he represented. Eventually, I gave him 3 minutes in which to rebut some of that. It was very, very interesting learning experience, but it obviously demonstrated that Zambia, which was at one time regarded as one of the beacons of African democracy, is no longer in that league, that the democratic space is increasingly shrinking.
How about your experience in Tanzania? What were the striking differences between Zambia and Tanzania? Or
sincerely, almost equally the same, and especially, in fact, when we, first of all, we had to wait, remember, before we landed in Dar es Salaam. We had to wait for almost 6 hours at Lusaka Airport. Kenya Airways initially was supposed to be late by 2 hours. Then we were told 3 hours. Then nobody said anything until, in fact, the plane arrived. We spent about 6 hours at the airport. We ended up, of course, arriving at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, Nairobi, on our way to Dar es Salaam. I don't even know, frankly, why we had to go through Nairobi to go to Dar es Salaam, when we could have simply, you know, maybe driven actually across. But I remember we spent about 6 or 7 hours, my friend, sitting at the airport. We slept actually at the airport on benches. And then eventually we arrived at Dar es Salaam, Julius Nyerere International Airport. Come on. You remember that almost all the immigration officers were crazy because they had met this kid from Kabale called Shaka. And I remember that Paul Ndiho had some problems with his US passport, especially because they didn't really have enough pages. They thought that they may, in fact, put you on the next plane.
That's true.
Then I said, you know what, I can't do anything here without this guy. This guy is my producer. And on the basis, of course, of perhaps their respect for the Kabale kid, you were able to be let in. I'm glad that they did, because we ended up doing wonderful types of, work, really.
How about the town hall you had at University of Dar es Salaam and the interaction you had with former opposition leader, Mr. Edward Lowassa?
Very interesting. Of course, at the university, remember that they were talking, the theme was about patriotism. And again, you had, of course, a government representative, a young man, and somebody I would actually call a friend, called January Makanga, who is a minister. Obviously, most of the people were critical of the government that he's associated with. He was also a very remarkable, I think, and articulate player. He tried the best way he could. And of course, later, it became my turn. Talked about, of course, how I grew up from humble beginnings in the Kabale and embarked on a journey from Kabale to Washington, D.C., and how, of course, I was not really new to Tanzania, because I said the first time, in fact, I had gone there was back in 1985, when I was a graduate student at the UCLA, and I had actually the opportunity to sit in that Nkrumah Hall, listening to a man who had just received a baton from the founding president, Julius Kambarage Nyerere, to be the second president of the United Republic of Tanzania, Ali Hassan Mwinyi. And then, of course, I had been back during his tenure as president, during the tenure of Benjamin Mkapa, the third president, and again during the tenure of the fourth president, Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, and it was an opportunity again to go there. And of course, again, I was a huge attraction. Almost every student, everybody wanted to take a picture, a selfie, an autograph. And yet we had this appointment to meet with former Tanzanian Prime Minister Edward Ruwasa, a man, in fact, who a lot of people say he should be the president because, according to them, he won the last election. It was stolen from him, according to them. There seems to be a lot of evidence. Unfortunately, in Tanzania, unlike Kenya, for example, you cannot petition an election. If you do, you just petition it to the Electoral Commission itself. So you can imagine. But it was very, very interesting. I had to run away, literally run away from Nkrumah Hall. You remember. And people said, no, we have to have a picture with you. Well, I had to go.
Yeah, okay, let's go to the comments. We're almost running out of time. Let's go to, let's start with Francis Pele from Zambia. He asks, what are the common things observed in the 3 countries you visited in terms of governance?
We started with that, Paul, man. I mean, this should have already been answered because, again, I said in terms of democracy, which was really our project, democratic transitions in Africa, you could probably say there was hardly any difference, frankly, between those 3 countries. When you think about DRC, obviously they have a problem. They have yet to hold an election, which should have been December 2016, but they still have had to go through negotiations and delays and voter registration and whatever you find. You go to Zambia, again I said, which used to be in a different really league in terms of being one of the beacons of hope for African democracy. It no longer is. It can no longer claim. In fact, most Zambians we met said it themselves. They said they can't believe what is happening. People are not free, for example, to actually express themselves. They even wondered, as a matter of fact, how that town hall meeting about the challenges of democracy in Zambia could actually have been held at the University of Zambia. Some of them said perhaps because, you represent the Voice of America, which is a major international media organization, obviously associated with the only superpower on this planet Earth.
Let's go to Alaji Barema Korka from Sierra Leone. He asks, is real democracy at work in these countries? What are the lessons for other countries?
To be honest with you, first of all, let's face it, democracy is a very interesting concept. If you talk about democracy as defined by Abraham Lincoln, the one-time great president of the United States, as a government being of a government of the people, by the people, for the people, I did not see that in Kinshasa. I did not see that in Lusaka. I did not see that in Dar es Salaam. I did not see that in Zanzibar. If you talk about democracy being defined as a government of some people, by some people, for some people, yes, I think I witnessed that in those 3 countries. As a matter of fact, you can't believe that, especially in Zambia and even in Tanzania for that matter, people that routinely found it easy to think that they had a right to own an opinion cannot even open their mouth. Incredible.
Very interesting. Let's go to Elliot Power from Uganda. He asks, what's your assessment of where democracy is heading in Tanzania after leaving opposition MP was shot and injured?
I think that democracy in Tanzania is definitely heading in the wrong place. For one thing, you have this young man, a critic of incumbent President John Pombe Magufuli. His name is Tundu Lissu. He is, in fact, a president of the Tanganyika Law Society, just like his counterpart who we interviewed on the island of Zanzibar, Ewanu Omar Said Shaban, who is the president of the Zanzibar Law Society. They're equally young, equally very articulate, people that feel they basically have a right to own an opinion. And they are very critical, not critical in the sense that it is up about themselves really, but they don't like the fact that their country seems to be heading in the wrong place. Tanzania, again, may not have really been one of those beacons of hope for African democracy, but at least it does have the reputation of having peace and stability. But the question is peace and stability the absence of war, the absence of conflict, or is it the presence of social economic justice for all?
Let's stay in Tanzania. Somebody wants to know why the show that was advertised that was supposed to go live on Azam television didn't happen.
Your guess is as good as mine. The official explanation that day, and in fact in the evening, was that they had developed some technical problems that they couldn't possibly put the satellite, the uplink, up so that Washington could get the downlink. But to be honest with you, in talking with many people and what have you, and a bit of what I sort of could maybe analyze out of what I heard and what I listened to, it would seem to me that those technical difficulties may in fact be translated into something akin to either orders or instructions from above.
Shaka, one final question. It's a sort of a personal question from Ayuka Ayamba in Dubai. What is the secret behind for you after staying in the US for 39 years and still maintains your mother tongue from your native Uganda?
Well, first of all, Ayuka, I have not been in the United States for 39 years. I have in fact been in the US for 41 years. There's no secret. I immediately discovered when I studied the cross-cultural communication and other things that you don't need to be an imitation of anybody in order to put your message across. All you need to do, as a matter of fact, is to remain authentically who you are. I happen to think that when I speak, I am understandable by my audience, or whoever I am in fact speaking with, because the last time I checked, when I was in universities, including UCLA, I did not have a translator to interact with my professors or students and stuff like that. But I was also reminded sincerely by a great man who at one time was Secretary of State for the United States, and that is Dr. Henry Kissinger, a man who was born in Germany, grew up, I think, in Germany after 13, before immigrating to the United States. He, at one time, was appointed by President Richard Nixon, who said, Henry, please do not address a lot of press conferences because your accent does not play in Oklahoma, meaning his accent wouldn't play in Middle America. So I see that Henry Kissinger still speaks English with a very huge dose, really, or influence of his German upbringing. And so I think I'm in very good company.
Very briefly, what are you talking about tomorrow on Straight Talk Africa?
Tomorrow we're talking about, we're visiting, of course, so we're visiting Zambian politics, and we are playing an interview or excerpts of the interview we made, an exclusive interview, by the way, with Zambian's major opposition leader, HH, Hakainde Hichilema. He will also be joined by another Zambian who obviously is an ardent supporter of the ruling Patriotic Front party of Edgar Lungu. And so it's about Zambian politics.
On that note, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next week on another edition of Shaka Extra Time. So long from Washington.
You're most welcome.
Yeah.
Hugely terrific.
Thank you.